All right, let's kick things off with a little puzzle. We live in this super connected world, right? But how do people in really high stakes professions actually communicate with each other when they don't even speak the same native language? And I mean, when one tiny mistake could be, well, catastrophic. It's a much bigger deal than you might think. Just imagine this for a second. You've got a pilot from Spain flying a massive passenger jet trying to land in Tokyo. On the other end of the radio is a local air traffic controller. A simple misunderstanding there isn't just awkward, it's genuinely dangerous. So, what language are they using? And more than that, how on earth do they make sure every single technical term is understood perfectly every single time? Okay, here's another piece of that puzzle. Think about a medical researcher in Brazil, maybe on the verge of a huge breakthrough. The absolute latest, most critical research in her field just got published in a prestigious British journal. How does she get through that super dense, highly specialized text to push her own vital work forward? Well, the answer to both of these situations is exactly the same, and it's actually pretty brilliant. This quote from way back in 1987 just nails it. It's not about learning all of English. Who has time for that? It's about learning the right English for the job. See, the English a pilot needs is totally different from the English a doctor needs. And this one simple, powerful idea, it kicked off a whole revolution in how we teach language. And that revolution, it has a name. It's called ESP, which stands for English for Specific Purposes. This is the big idea that language learning should be custom built around a learner's specific goals. We're not talking about learning how to order a coffee here. We're talking about laser-focused, targeted communication. So the official definition is actually super clear. It basically says that every single decision in the course, what words you learn, what skills you practice, the articles you read, it all comes from one single question. Why does this person need to learn English? The learner's goal isn't just some small part of it. It is the absolute ground zero, the starting point for everything else. So where did this whole idea even come from? Well, ESP wasn't just some theory cooked up in a university office. Nope, it was born out of pure necessity. The world changed in a huge way after World War II, and that change created a really urgent, practical problem that needed solving. You could say ESP emerged from this kind of perfect storm of three major global shifts. First, you had the post-war boom. Science, technology, and international trade were just exploding, and all these different fields needed a common language, a lingua franca, to get business done. And that language became English. At the very same time, the field of linguistics was changing. Experts started caring less about memorizing perfect grammar and more about how people actually use language in real life. And finally, the learners themselves were different. You had busy adults, professionals who didn't have 5 years to study Shakespeare. They needed English for their jobs, and they needed it like yesterday. And, like any big idea, ESP didn't just pop into existence fully formed. It grew up. It evolved over decades, getting smarter and more focused with each new phase. Let's actually take a quick walk through that journey. You can see this really clear evolution here. It kicked off in the 60s by just focusing on the nuts and bolts, the specific vocabulary and grammar of a certain field, like engineering. Then, in the 70s, it kind of zoomed out a little to look at how whole sentences and paragraphs fit together. But the real game changer was the big shift away from the language itself and towards the actual person learning it. By the 80s and 90s, the focus was all about the real-world situations and the specific skills a learner needed. And that brings us to today, with an approach that is totally centered on the individual learner, their unique goals, their needs, their motivations. So what does ESP actually look like out in the wild? Well, it isn't just one thing. It's way more like a massive family tree, with tons of different branches all sprouting from the same root. This classic diagram, the tree of English language teaching, shows you just how big a deal ESP is. See, it's not some little twig. It's a huge, major branch that splits right off from General English, forging its own path. And you'll notice right away that main branch splits again into two very distinct worlds. Those two main branches are EAP and EOP. On one side, you have English for Academic Purposes, or EAP. Think of this as English for students. It's all about surviving and thriving in university. How to write a research paper, understand a fast-talking professor, and read academic journals. Then, on the other side, you have English for Occupational Purposes, EOP. This is for professionals who are already out there in the workforce. It's all about the specific language you need to do your job well. And from those two branches, you get an incredible amount of specialization. You've got English for medical purposes, which helps doctors and nurses communicate clearly with patients. There's English for legal purposes, for lawyers who need to understand the ridiculously complex language of contracts. Of course, there's business English for negotiating deals and writing reports. And English for science and technology, which helps engineers read those dense technical manuals. Each one of these is its own complete, specialized world of language. So, why does any of this matter? What's the big takeaway? It matters because at its heart, ESP is a total revolution in how we approach education. It puts the learner and their real-life practical goals front and center, always. And the engine that powers this entire philosophy is a process called needs analysis. This is the absolute first step for any good ESP course. It's basically a diagnostic. It asks two simple questions. What are your English skills right now, and what English skills do you need to have to succeed in your career? The entire course is then designed specifically to build a bridge across that gap. And that's really the bottom line. More than anything else, ESP is a philosophy. It says we need to stop teaching a generic one-size-fits-all English. We need to start teaching the exact English that real people actually need to achieve their real-world goals. It's just so much more efficient, it's motivating, and it's incredibly practical. It's the whole reason our pilot from Spain and our researcher from Brazil can do what they do best. So, I'll leave you with this final thought. If you could design your own perfect custom-built English course, what would it be for? What specific purpose would it serve? What unique world would you want that language to unlock for you?